Picture a time long ago, in the year 235 AD, when the world was vast and empires clashed under the weight of their own ambitions. In the quiet hills of Huesca, Spain, a young boy named Lawrence stood on a grassy ridge, his eyes tracing the endless blue of the sky. The sun bathed the fields in gold, and the air carried the scent of olive groves and wild thyme. Lawrence was no ordinary child. Born to a humble family, he felt a spark within, a calling that whispered of something greater than the simple life around him. His parents, devout Christians in a world ruled by Roman gods, taught him the stories of Jesus, of sacrifice, and of love that could conquer even death. As he gazed at the horizon, little did he know that his name would one day echo through the ages, a beacon of courage in a world of shadows. The Roman Empire, vast and unyielding, stretched far beyond these hills, its marble cities gleaming with power. But here, in Huesca, Lawrence's heart was shaped by faith, by the quiet strength of those who believed in a kingdom not of this world. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of crimson, young Lawrence felt the first stirrings of a destiny that would lead him to Rome, to the heart of an empire that would try to break him, and fail. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine that boy on the hill, his dreams as vast as the sky above, unaware of the trials that await, but already carrying the light of unshakable faith. Rest now, and let his story unfold. Years passed, and the boy from Huesca grew into a man of purpose. By 250 AD, Lawrence had journeyed to Rome, the beating heart of the empire. Imagine the scene, a city alive with the clamor of merchants, the clatter of chariot wheels, and the shouts of soldiers. Marble temples gleamed under the sun, their statues of Jupiter and Mars staring down with cold, unyielding eyes. Lawrence, now in his early 20s, stepped into this world, his heart pounding with both wonder and resolve. He had come to serve the church, drawn by a faith that burned brighter than the Roman sun. The city was a marvel, its aqueducts carrying water like veins of life, its forums buzzing with debates and decrees. But beneath the grandeur, a shadow loomed. Christians, like Lawrence, were a small but growing community, meeting in secret, their prayers whispered in the catacombs. Lawrence's gifts, his sharp mind and compassionate heart, caught the eye of Sixtus, a wise priest who would soon become pope. Sixtus saw in Lawrence a rare strength, not of muscle but of spirit, and made him a deacon, entrusting him with the church's treasures. These were not gold or jewels, but the poor, the sick, the forgotten, those whom Rome cast aside. As Lawrence walked the crowded streets, he carried a quiet certainty, a belief that love could outshine even the empire's might. The Colosseum's shadow stretched long, a reminder of the spectacles that thrilled the masses, but Lawrence's eyes were fixed on a different kingdom. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine his footsteps echoing on Rome's ancient stones, a young man stepping boldly into a destiny that would test his soul. Sleep now, and let the story carry you deeper into the heart of Rome. Deep beneath the city, where Rome's grandeur could not reach, the Christians gathered in secret. It was 257 AD, and the catacombs, dark, winding tunnels carved into the earth, became their sanctuary. Picture the scene. Torchlight dances on stone walls, illuminating crude carvings of fish and crosses, symbols of a faith that refused to die. Lawrence, now a trusted deacon, moved among the people, his voice soft but steady. He broke bread for the hungry, bandaged the wounds of the sick, and spoke words of hope to those who feared the empire's wrath. The Roman authorities grew wary of this growing sect, their loyalty to a king not named Caesar. Emperor Valerian, a ruler hardened by war and suspicion, saw Christians as a threat to his power. Yet in these shadowed tunnels, Lawrence's faith shone brighter than ever. As the church's treasurer, he guarded its true wealth, not gold, but the love that bound this community together. He listened to their fears, their stories of loss, and reminded them of a promise greater than Rome's legions. Above ground, the city roared with life, but here, in the silence of the catacombs, Lawrence found his purpose. He was no warrior, no senator, yet his courage was forged in these moments of quiet service. The empire's eyes were beginning to turn toward him, whispers of his name reaching the palaces. But Lawrence cared little for fame. His heart was with the widow who clutched his hand, the child who smiled at his kindness. As you drift toward sleep, imagine those flickering torches, the soft murmurs of prayer, and Lawrence's steady presence among the forgotten. The world above may have been Rome's, but here, in the dark, a new light was rising. Rest now, and let the story guide you through the shadows, where faith grows strongest in the face of fear. In 258 AD, the storm broke over Rome's Christians. Emperor Valerian, his patience worn thin, unleashed a decree that would shake the faithful to their core. Picture the scene: a palace of breathtaking splendor, its marble floors reflecting the flicker of oil lamps, its walls adorned with statues of gods who demanded obedience. Valerian, a man carved from ambition and iron, sat upon his throne, his eyes cold as he surveyed the young Deacon before him. Lawrence stood alone, his simple tunic a stark contrast to the wealth around him. The emperor's voice boomed, demanding the treasures of the church: gold, silver, anything that could fill Rome's coffers. The official sneered, expecting fear, submission. But Lawrence's gaze was steady, his heart anchored by a truth greater than Rome's might. He asked for 3 days to gather the church's wealth, and Valerian, intrigued by this bold Deacon, agreed. Whispers filled the palace. Some spoke of Lawrence's courage, others of his folly. Outside, the city buzzed with tension as Christians hid and soldiers searched. Lawrence returned to the catacombs, not to gather gold, but to prepare an act that would defy an empire. He knew the cost of his defiance, the shadow of death that loomed ever closer. Yet he moved with purpose, his faith a shield against fear. The emperor's demand was a test, not just of Lawrence, but of the church itself. Could they bend, or would they break? As you lie in the quiet of your room, imagine that palace, the weight of an empire pressing down on one man's shoulders. Lawrence stood not for himself, but for those he served: the poor, the broken, the faithful. His heart beat with a courage that Rome could not understand. Sleep now, and let the story carry you to the moment when one man's audacity would challenge the heart of an empire. Rest, and dream of the light that shines brightest in the darkest hour. 3 days later, Rome witnessed a spectacle it would never forget. Picture the scene: a bustling street outside the treasury, where Roman officials awaited their prize. They expected wagons laden with gold, chests brimming with jewels. Instead, Lawrence arrived with a different kind of treasure. Before the grand building, he gathered the poor, the lame, the blind, the widows, and the orphans, the forgotten souls of Rome. He stood tall, his voice ringing out, declaring, "These are the treasures of the church." The crowd fell silent, the officials' faces twisting in shock and rage. This was no act of submission. It was defiance, bold and unyielding. Lawrence, with no weapon but his faith, had turned Rome's greed against itself. The poor, clothed in rags, stood as living proof of the church's mission, their dignity a rebuke to the empire's excess. Soldiers gripped their spears, unsure how to respond to this audacious display. The people whispered, some in awe, others in fear, as Lawrence's words echoed through the street. Valerian's decree had sought to crush the Christians, but Lawrence had transformed it into a moment of triumph. He knew the price of his actions. Rome did not forgive such boldness. Yet he stood unafraid, his heart alight with the certainty that true wealth lay not in gold, but in love. The sun beat down, casting long shadows, as the empire faced a truth it could not silence. As you drift into the quiet of sleep, imagine that street, the faces of the poor lifted by one man's courage, the empire's might humbled by a deacon's faith. Lawrence stood as a bridge between heaven and earth, his act a testament to a power greater than Rome. Rest now, and let the story carry you to the fire that would test him next, where courage would shine brighter than any flame. On August 10th, 258 AD, Rome prepared its cruelest spectacle. Picture the scene: an execution ground at the city's edge, where the air was thick with the scent of burning wood and fear. A massive iron gridiron, its bars glowing red from the fire beneath, stood as the empire's answer to Lawrence's defiance. The Romans designed this punishment not just to kill, but to break the spirit, to make an example of those who dared challenge their gods. Lawrence, bound and laid upon the searing metal, faced a fate meant to crush even the strongest soul. The crowd gathered. Some jeered, hungry for the spectacle. Others wept, their hearts breaking for the young Deacon. Soldiers stood watch, their faces hard, expecting screams of agony to satisfy their emperor. But Lawrence was no ordinary man. As the flames rose and the iron burned his flesh, he did not cry out in pain. Instead, his voice, clear and calm, cut through the smoke. "Turn me over. I'm done on this side." The words stunned the crowd, a ripple of awe and disbelief spreading through the masses. This was no delirium, no madness. It was courage, impossible and radiant, born of a faith that Rome could not comprehend. The soldiers hesitated, their hands trembling, as if the fire itself recoiled from such strength. The gridiron, meant to be an instrument of terror, became a stage for Lawrence's triumph. His body suffered, but his spirit soared, untouched by the flames. Witnesses later swore they saw a light around him, a glow that no fire could dim. In that moment, Rome's power faltered. Its spectacle turned into a testimony of faith. The empire sought to silence him, but Lawrence's words would echo far beyond that day, carried by those who saw, who believed. As you lie in the stillness of your bed, imagine that fire, the pain, and the man who faced it with a heart unbroken. His courage was a flame of its own, one that would light the path for generations. Sleep now, and let the story carry you to the legacy of a man who turned. The flames died down, but the story of Lawrence did not. Picture Rome under a starlit sky, the city's grandeur softened by the quiet of night. In the days following his death, whispers spread like wildfire. The man who faced the gridiron with a jest, who turned Rome's cruelty into a testament of faith, became more than a martyr. He became a symbol. In hidden corners, Christians gathered, their prayers bolder now, their hearts kindled by Lawrence's courage. A simple shrine rose, adorned with flowers and candles, where people came to honor the Deacon who gave everything for his faith. The empire, vast and mighty, could not extinguish the light he left behind. Valerian's persecution continued, but it faltered, as if the emperor himself sensed the tide turning. Lawrence's death, meant to break the church, instead strengthened it. His story spread beyond Rome, carried by travelers, whispered in markets, sung in hymns. The poor he loved, the outcasts he called treasure, became the heart of a growing faith. Years later, the empire that sought to destroy him would bow to the very God he served. Churches rose in his name, their altars glowing with the same light that shone through him on that fiery gridiron. The Colosseum, once a stage for Rome's triumphs, became a relic, while Lawrence's legacy endured, a beacon for those who face impossible odds. His courage showed the world that true power lies not in swords or gold, but in a heart that refuses to bend. As you drift into the gentle embrace of sleep, imagine that shrine, its candles flickering like stars, each one a prayer for the man who laughed in the face of death. His story is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, faith can burn brighter than any fire. Let it warm your heart as you rest, carrying you to dreams of hope and strength. Good night.